Yeah.
We're always working hard for our money, but is our money working hard for us? Now that you're an adult and you're trying to build a business, how successful do you think you can be if you have that recurring unconscious thought in your mind that you learned from the tribe that you grew up with that said that money was evil? Money does not corrupt the person, it reveals a person. And when I heard that said, I was like, wow, that makes me feel good, because the more money I made, I didn't become any less of who I was. It just amplified who I was. Families with financial intelligence can change the world for the better. That is, I totally believe that. And if I believe that, that's my purpose now. My mission is to really empower families.
This is the Relentless Pursuit of Winning podcast, where we are here to educate, equip, and inspire people to build extraordinary companies. We're so glad you're here. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you can get updates every time we drop a new episode. Now, let's get it started. Hey, folks, welcome to another episode of the Relentless Pursuit of Winning podcast. My name is Rick Meekins. I'm going to be your host as usual. And in our studio, we have Gino Barbaro. How are you today, sir?
Rick, how you doing? Good, brother. How you doing?
Fantastic. I'm doing fantastic. I'm looking forward to the spring weather, starting to get warm again. We're in that, as we're recording this, we're in that baby winter where it's just like, it was 70 degrees on Sunday and then it drops down to 30. And then this Sunday coming up is going to be 80.
Yes, there's light at the end of the tunnel.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. This is going to be a great show. I'm excited. Gino is an experienced entrepreneur, real estate investor, and he's about bringing the control of money back to families. So we've got a lot of things to talk about. We've got a lot of great experience that we share. But folks, if you haven't done it already, I would be grateful if you would like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you get updates every time we drop a new episode. So without further ado, let's get into it. Gino, give us a little background, who you are, what you do, and why you do what you do.
Who I am, I think first and foremost, father of six. That's probably the most important thing. That's probably the identity that I want to leave when I'm not here any longer. I've got 6 children, married 27 years. I am a former pizza owner. I owned a restaurant for years until I said, bro, this job is killing me. I got to get out. I'm just working harder. I'm making less. And for those of you restaurant owners out there, you know what I'm talking about. And I just finally had enough. I loved it. Rick, it was part of my DNA. I was 8 years old going to work with my father at his restaurant. I fell in love with the business. I went to college, worked in a cubicle for a year, hated that. We opened our own family place, and I had it for about 15 years before I realized it's not my dream. It's not something that I want to do. I can't create lasting legacy, lasting wealth with it. And that's why I got into the real estate space.
Got it. So there's like 1, 2, 3% profit margins that didn't do it for you. 70, 80 hour weeks. The people
It's
not showing
incredible.
up on critical times. That didn't it keeps it
You know,
exciting, right?
I want to mention this to people because I think this is truly important. And you've mentioned so many things that suck about the business. But the reason why I think ultimately I left, and it wasn't something that I realized back then, but I realize it now. And it's something that we call values-based decision making. And the restaurant early on in my life, it aligned with my values: hard work, responsibility. I had fun. But as I got older and I started having kids, it stopped aligning with those values because I'm working every weekend. I'm working on the holidays. I'm working harder. I'm making less. And all of a sudden, I don't know why it doesn't feel right anymore. I'm like, I can live with 3% margins. I'm okay with that. But once the values, it don't align. So if anybody's listening to this right now and you are investing in whatever venture and it doesn't feel right, just check your values. See where they are. And for me, they just stopped aligning. And that's when I said, I need to make a change. I mean, obviously the financial component was there, but I think I was smart enough to figure out, hey, I can open another restaurant. I can start doing some videos. I wrote a cookbook. I could have started building that brand out around the restaurant and around my family. But I just didn't like it. It just stopped aligning with my values. Does that make sense?
Well, yeah, I mean that's exactly what happened to me. I had my restaurant, and we're killing. We had a great time, and
Mm-hmm.
then I met my wife. Oh, and I was just like, it's one. And I'd been in the
Yes.
industry long enough to know that it's really one or the other.
Mm-hmm.
And I chose her. It was just like I want to build a family. And that was right before that was what, a year before we moved to Atlanta. Oh yeah, totally get it. I never thought about it through that lens of values based decision making, but that makes sense because that's what I did. That's what and I've done that a few times in my career. I love that.
I bet you do that every day, and I bet everybody listening to this does that. Whenever you're making a decision, where you're going out to eat, what kind of car you're going to drive, who you're going to partner with, what kind of real estate deal you're going to do. Are you going to invest in crypto? I don't invest in crypto because it doesn't align with my values. Now, if you can go through that process, that mental process of thinking about how to make the decision, and you can really make it rational, not just purely on emotions, because when we make decisions based on emotions, especially with money, things go off the rails. But if you can sit down logically and say, okay, I've got a pile of money here. I want to make this decision. How and where am I going to deploy my assets? You know what? Crypto doesn't align with my values personally because I can't value it. There's no intrinsic value. It doesn't really pay me. I don't get any kind of cash flow from it. There's no It's not a hard asset, and I don't truly understand it. So, it doesn't align with my values. I can say no to that. And I think everybody, every time you make a decision, do that mental gymnastics. Go through it real quick, and you'll see to yourself, every time you make a good decision, it'll feel good. But when you do make a bad decision, you'll get that feeling in your gut. You'll just get that feeling in your body. And you're like, it doesn't feel good. And that's why it doesn't feel good, because it doesn't align with what you truly believe and what you truly value.
You know what's interesting, especially when we talk about values. You have folks that go into businesses because they feel that it's purpose driven.
Hmm.
And I work with entrepreneurs. They say, okay, this is an opportunity. I can go out. I can definitely make money, doing this thing, et cetera, et cetera. But you've got that other camp of folks that say, hey, you know what? My values tell me that I need to go out and, X, Y, Z. I don't know how I'm going to make money doing it, but what do you say to folks like that?
Well, money is a tough subject to talk about. It's pretty taboo. It's interesting. People could talk about sex, they could talk about drugs, they could talk about everything. But when the word money comes up, all of a sudden people tense up. And I'm going to say something that may be controversial to some of the listeners, but I know it's not controversial to you. Money does not corrupt a person, it reveals a person. And when I heard that said, I was like, wow, that makes me feel good, because the more money I made, I didn't become any less of who I was. It just amplified who I was. Money to me ended up becoming a result. The better I got at something, the more money I made. Money allowed me to create more impact. So when we go back to your original question, I think what people need to do, and what I learned through money coaching, was we need to understand what our own personal relationship with money is. I view money differently than you do because I had different relationships growing up with money. When I grew up with money as a young kid who had two immigrant parents, the word save was all over the house. Save for a rainy day, never for a sunny day, always for a rainy day. Don't know why, Rick. I was conditioned to be a little bit of a scarcity mindset. I was conditioned to have a little bit of fear around the money and around the economy. So I grew up great at being able to save money. I also grew up understanding that, you basically, whatever you kill, you eat what you kill. You're going to become a business owner. So I had that mindset, and that's why it led me down the path that I did. I had obviously some kinds of what we call financial flashpoints, those emotions, memories around money that become really emotional, whether they were good or they're bad. So as you're asking yourself this question, and as you hear Rick's question, what is your relationship with money? What happened to you when you were young and how it formed? Because if you're here listening to this and you feel uncomfortable about money, what makes you uncomfortable about money? Is it the fact that no one in your family really ever talked about it? They avoided it? Or did you hear in your family, as in my wife's family, rich people are greedy and they're evil? And now that you're an adult and you're trying to build a business, how successful do you think you can be if you have that recurring unconscious thought in your mind that you learned from the tribe that you grew up with that said that money was evil, and now you're trying to be one of those people who is creating money? Your brain won't link it. You're going to say, well, I'm going to be evil if I make money. So if I make some money, let me just lose it so I won't be evil. It's really interesting to understand that as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, even as a parent, the relationship that you have with money will dictate, in my opinion, how you become successful, whether it's in business, whether it's in investing. It's a really important component that most people overlook.
Back to the question though. Give me some insight on that. We have our purpose driven people. We have our financially focused people. What are your thoughts just in general on that?
So, as far as purpose and financially focused, remember the financially focused people, they may just say to themselves, when I'm looking at it from the money perspective, they're financially focused. They're just all about the money. They may have had a parent who was broke, and now they get older and they're like, I'm not going to be like that parent. I'm going to build a massive business here. But is that the right reason to be building a massive business as far as being financially focused? You have to understand that it's not right or wrong, just understanding that. And I think that people who are purpose driven, maybe they may be aloof and they may not think about money. And that may be their way of saying, you know what, I don't really unconsciously don't care about money. I really more about the purpose. And if we want to go into the archetypes of money and how people relate to it and how they make decisions based about it, I think the purpose driven entrepreneur is always the one who's going to win out, because if they're truly not focused on money, and I can give you a perfect example. I mean, Elon Musk to me is the purpose driven entrepreneur who sleeps on a warehouse floor and doesn't really care about the house he has, or even Warren Buffett, who's had the same house for the last 50 years. I think
Yeah.
they're more purpose driven, but they're also financially savvy and financially intelligent. They come to a point they know they need to make money. They know that they need to monetize in the business, but that's not going to stop them from catching rockets from outer space, right? They may 5 or 6 or 10 may blow up, but they're going to continue to focus on their purpose. And I think that purpose allows them to continue to be relentless, as far as your show is the relentless. What is it? The relentless podcast, right? That amount of purpose allows you to become relentless, because as an entrepreneur, you're going to get punched in the face, you're going to get torn down. But if you have that purpose, if you know where you're going, you're going to get deviated, but you will stay on the path for your purpose. And if you're just only financially motivated, I'm telling you, I was financially motivated with the restaurant. I ultimately got burned out. There was no purpose. There was no vision there. With this entity that I'm creating now with the family, with my real estate, there's a lot of purpose there. I mean, obviously there's a financial incentive to it, but I have a lot of purpose behind those entities.
Are you talking about the Barbaro 360, or are you talking about tell us a little bit about that? I want to hear your why there.
Well, it's interesting. The why came from, I had a real estate company called Jake and Gino. We were, teaching people to buy deals, buy real estate, invest in multifamily. That came from our portfolio. I did it for 6 or 7 years, Rick. And it was one of those things that I really enjoyed, but I got frustrated because I couldn't help everybody. Not everybody can buy multifamily. Not everyone's built to buy multifamily. And every time I had a group of students in a room, I do presentations with my wife. They would always come up to me and say, Gino, that is great, but how do you do that thing? You've got 6 kids. How do you do real estate, family, teaching, money? And how are your kids so nice? And how do you guys get along? How do they actually like you? You have teenage kids. And I'm like, it's not something I thought of. It's just something I put work into it. And that's how we ended up creating Barbaro 360. Saw how important money is to families, right? Families with financial intelligence can change the world for the better. I totally believe that. And if I believe that, that's my purpose now. My mission is to really empower families. First and foremost, by starting the spouses, husbands and wives, to start talking about money, start understanding where their money bios were, how they ended up growing up around money. And then when they got together and got married, did they ever share those stories? I know I didn't with my wife, and I there was a lot of conflict over the years about money as we got married and as we started raising kids. And it's only over the last few years that I've realized through money coaching, wow, I wish I had these tools. I wish I had these skills to be able to have these conversations and to ultimately become financially intimate with my wife. That is important, because once you can become intimate financially and be able to talk about money and be able to not get triggered and be able to have conversations about it and make decisions around it. And then your kids see you acting in a healthy way around money, and they don't get those scars and those financial flashpoints. They grow up healthy. You start breaking that pattern from one family to the next generation. I mean, imagine doing that at scale. Wow, that's what, to me, this country really needs.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Wow. I'm there with you, and at the same time, I'm thinking about entrepreneurs. Maybe you can relate. I grew up, kind of in a hustle culture. We're going out, we're selling stuff, we're turning around, and it's like over and over and over again. But looking back as an entrepreneur, and again, you can probably relate to this. It's not a sustainable way of working. You know what I'm
Mhm,
saying? Because you're hand to mouth. You are, et cetera, et cetera. How
mhm.
does one make that shift from that hustle culture to really making good, solid financial decisions, that impact, obviously their businesses, but also their families?
That is a great question. If you give me a second to think about that one, because there's so many components to that question, because I was always in the hustle. I still think I'm in the hustle to a lesser degree, but for me, This may sound simplistic, but if you can go out and buy assets and have those assets throw up some income for you, and then at a certain point in your life, you become financially free where you're actually just paying your bills, it takes a lot of pressure off, Rick. I mean, when I became financially free for my restaurant and I left in 2016, I did the real estate full time. That's when I was able to start the podcast and write the real estate book and start the coaching program and go towards my sole purpose. It was really hard to do it when I had to pay the bills. But I think as entrepreneurs, yeah, the hustle, the grind, the transactions, they pay the bills. Equity is what makes you rich. And I think as an entrepreneur, you need to continue to focus on your business and earn it there. But there's a little hustle. There's always a little something left over after the hustle. Don't blow that all. Put some of that hustle to work. We're always working hard for our money, but is our money working hard for us? That's the shift that I made. Once I understood that, I'm like, holy crap, stop saving money for an event. Save money to buy an asset like a multifamily, like a short-term rental. That asset will pay for the event. And then when that event is over, whether it's college, whether it's a wedding, whatever it is, that event is done. The asset's still there producing more cash flow. And that was the difference. And that will set you free, my friend.
Yeah, yeah. Wow, wow. I'm thinking about how, that journey, like even, from we talked about the idea that, we've got our business owners, folks that are, just out there basically self-employed. They've created a job for themselves
Mm-hmm.
versus entrepreneurs. And in my mind, entrepreneurs is more an investment level. Let's do this type scenario. I mean, can you go into that a little bit?
Yes.
And I don't know if I've gotten your definition messed up, but let's chat about that a little bit.
This is a great question because there's different types of entrepreneurs, different way people view it.
Yeah.
And I'm going to say something that you may think I'm crazy, but I personally think that my wife is an entrepreneur. And the reason why I say that is we have 6 children. She's homeschooled all 6 kids. She's a great chef. She's a doctor. She's a chauffeur. She's a house cleaner. She does it all. She provides a tremendous amount of value to the household. Now, if you think of an entrepreneur in the business sense, Tony Robbins defines it as an entrepreneur is a person who makes enough money to pay for his or her own mistakes. That was me early on. And I think if you want to take the higher level view of what an entrepreneur is, to me, an entrepreneur is somebody who starts a business to provide value for the marketplace and to solve a problem. Now, the people that create jobs for themselves, myself included, when I started the restaurant, is they started the job for themselves. They didn't start it for the marketplace. When I started that pizzeria, that restaurant, it was all about how much money am I making, bro? I'm going to get rich. It's not, I want to deliver the most incredible experience. I want to deliver the nicest slice of pizza possible. I want to make my customers super happy. I mean, it was, but I was always the first one in that equation. I think to me, what defines an entrepreneur is they see a problem, they see a solution, they can provide value, and they put their customers ahead. Then, and it comes to their employees. Then it comes, in my instance, if I have any investors investing in my deal, they're part of the equation. And then I'm the last one. And it's hard being an entrepreneur because it's lonely. Sometimes people think you're crazy. You run out of money. You're all alone. But you're there to solve a problem. And when things work, it's just such a liberating feeling. I think entrepreneurs like to tinker, like to fix things, like to make things better. And I think that to me is what an entrepreneur is. It's somebody who's out there that's providing value, that sees there's a need in the marketplace, and they're willing to take a risk to address that need.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I love that. I love the creative approach. Because it's never straight. It's never just like, hey, I'm going to do this thing. It's got to be, how am I going to stand out? How am I going to make value for this particular community? I love that aspect of it. You talked about the idea. Oh my goodness, I lost my train of thought. I hate when I do that. Entrepreneurship as a journey. Okay, so you started off in the pizza restaurant. You started off as a technician and you
Mhm.
built up over time. There were a lot of powerful moments in your journey. What were some transition points for you that really stand out in your mind?
I read Michael Gerber's book, The E Myth, years
Really?
ago.
Yes,
Years ago.
that's a good one.
And the first time I read it, I'm like, this guy's an idiot. This shit never works. That's the first thing I'm like, this guy's what does he know? And
Right.
I actually interviewed him about 6 or 7 years ago. And I'm like, this guy it was a genius. I mean, when he wrote the book, there was not that much information out there like that. I'm sorry, there just wasn't.
Right.
Systems, processes, people, culture. It was all of that imbued. So when I started out, it was just very interesting. I started out as that technician. And as the journey went along, what ended up happening was I was stuck in that role because that's how my dad raised me in that business. I couldn't see outside the box. That's how you run a restaurant. I couldn't see scaling up. I couldn't see getting someone to run the kitchen and pull myself out. I wasn't wired that way. When I started with my business partner, Jake, and we bought our first deal, I sort of brought a lot of those habits along. But it was interesting because my business partner was boots on the ground and I was the person who was 3 states away. So I couldn't touch, I couldn't see, I couldn't feel every day. And to me, that was actually benefit. I was still bookkeeping, I was still asset managing, I was still running the portfolio, but I was running it from afar. And as Rick, as we started to scale, I said to myself, as most of us, I didn't come out of the womb knowing how to scale a business. There's got to be a way to do it. How do you do it? People have done it before. And I started getting trained, whether it was EOS, whether it was, we used a company scaling up, Vern Harnish, a great company. I actually went to a Maui Mastermind event this couple weeks ago in Orlando. They have another scaling company that teaches businesses to scale. And for me, that was like life changing because all of a sudden I saw that, yeah, you can have systems and they don't have to be that difficult. But one thing that I did, Rick, that really helped us out was I didn't outgrow the infrastructure. We had the systems in place for what we had. We didn't go buy X amount of deals that would really outgrow or outstretch what we had in place. So for anybody out there looking to scale and thinking that yourself you're a technician, what I would do is go online and start Googling scaling companies, Googling systems, processes, just start tinkering, start putting those systems into your business. And you'll see that even if you don't scale to a big company, maybe you're running a podcast and you hate editing this podcast. That's not something you should be doing. That's something you should be delegating out. But you need to create a system on how you do it. Take it out of your mind and put it onto a piece of paper. Start small. Once you've seen you've done that, then it's like, okay, what else do I hate doing? My business partner hates bookkeeping. Guess what? Bookkeeper was next. And then the next hire is maybe an executive assistant. And the list goes on and on. But I think you got to think big, but just start small.
Think big, start small. I like that. I like that. What was it? What was one of the challenges that we have as entrepreneurs is things happen that are outside of our thinking. I mean, it could be anything. I mean, what was an example of something that happened to you and you just were able to work your way through it?
I mean, outside of our thinking, what's going on in the Middle East right now? I mean, there's $106 barrels of oil. To me, I can go back to 2008 and the Great Recession. Bush was a moron. He screwed the whole thing up. Then we got Obama, in my opinion, which wasn't much better, but I don't have any control over that. And at the time, I thought I did. 95% of what we can control is here. 5% is external. Once you realize that, it's pretty cool. I can't do anything about what's going on in Iran right now. And it's been driving me nuts because I'm like, really? How is this going to affect the real estate? I need lower interest rates. Now all of a sudden oil's going up. Inflation's going to go up. If inflation goes up, I won't get lower rates. I need to refi these deals. So for us, it's challenging. But once you realize that you don't have control, you can only control what's on your plate. And that's what I ended up doing in '08. In '08, I understood that if I save this restaurant, I'm going to go broke. I'm not going to make money. That's why I pivoted and said, okay, I'm going to start learning about this real estate thing. I've made a couple of really crappy deals. How do I learn the business of real estate? And I understood that I needed to get mentorship. Rick, I had learned on the street. There's two ways to learn. You either learn on the street or you learn in the classroom. I learned on the street. I lost a ton of money doing that. That's when I decided in '08, I'm not going to blame anybody anymore. There's nothing that I can control out there. I can only control what's in here. And that for me is when I decided to get into mentorship and decided to learn the business of real estate.
Mm. Do you have a particular process you use? I mean, something happened. COVID is the ideal scenario. COVID happened. We're all locked down. We have to do things differently. No options. Do you have a process that you use to work through that?
So when COVID happened, we had a call with our business coach on scaling up. And the first thing that we told him was, don't mention COVID. Let's pretend it didn't even happen. Let's just try to plan for the next 6 months. And what did he do? The very first thing he did on the call with our team was talking about COVID and freaking out about COVID. We fired him, 20 minutes after the call. What I do when something like that happens is there's a stimulus and a response. That's what Stephen Covey talks about. And when you're younger, you're not really conditioned to think about the stimulus and response. You respond right away. When
Yeah.
COVID happened, it was really challenging for our business. We have to have people come into our offices and take a look at units, and people couldn't come in. So what we did is we just sat down and we brainstormed of ways to be able to show apartments. Virtual tours were incredible. They were great. We got cameras out. We went into all of our units. We did tours, recordings, putting them up online. We did a lot more stuff online as far as digitizing everything, putting up everything online. What we didn't do is we didn't freak out, because that's what people tend to do. And on the investor side, a couple of things that we did was we actually started doing collections daily to show our investors that, hey, world hasn't fallen, hasn't ended. People are still paying their rent. Oh, and by the way, every Friday at 12 o'clock Eastern, we have an hour Zoom call live. If anybody wants to jump on, you can jump on. And oh, by the way, team, end of day reports. We know that at that time, you need to over communicate. You need to be able to over communicate with your team because they're afraid. And if you show that fear or you don't address that, it's going to really affect the team. So for like the next year and a half after COVID, they would have end of day reports and they would literally get on the call probably 3 times a week just to talk about end of days with the property managers and with the maintenance techs to see what was going on. So my, I guess, solution to what you're talking about is the process you go through is assess the situation, try to pull your emotions out of it, try to slow things down. You need to slow down to speed up. You don't want to speed up and make hasty decisions. You need to slow things down. And I think you really need to communicate and try to figure out what's going on. And COVID was the perfect example that people just, remember Cardone coming on, we're firing 30% of our staff. An overreaction, because then all of a sudden PPP money comes in and all of a sudden things aren't as bad as you think they are. Government's giving relief. People can pay their rent. That to me was a telltale sign. COVID was a great example of what you're talking about.
Yeah, definitely, definitely, definitely. I've had that conversation with a lot of different people, and it's just like, you really, as you said, just kind of step back, assess the situation. What resources do we have? All right,
Mhm.
let's create a plan to go forward. I think that's beautiful. You've been leading people for many years. Do you have a particular leadership style that you lean into?
It's interesting. My business partner and I are very different. When we get on a podcast, I want to get to know Rick. I want to get to feel Rick. I want to get to connect with Rick. My business partner is more of a bullets point kind of guy, just wants to get the thing done, wants to knock it out. It's very, even when we talk to brokers, I'm more of the Mr. Broker, how you doing today? How's it been? What's going on in the market? I want to get to know the person. And I think any leader who's really good at what they do, whether you're a father, whether you're a manager, whether you're a leader in an organization, before you try to solve anything, I think you need to connect with the person. And especially if you're a parent, if your kid comes to you and has a problem and you go right into solve mode, and I know this better than anybody probably, they're not gonna listen to you. And it's the same thing with a team member. They come up with a problem and you go right into solve mode, it's not gonna work. You really need to truly connect. Seek first to understand, then to be understood. That's the Stephen Covey mantra that I've been trying to live with. Is it hard? Absolutely. But for me, that connection and solving is so important. And once you do that, once you learn to connect with the person, you can tell your team members when they come with the problem, something that all leaders should do. And this is something going back to the entrepreneur where you may have that pride or the ego, or you want to be able to solve everything. Why don't you ask, hey, Rick, we can't get into units during COVID. Come up with 3 solutions on what you think we should do since we can't get in, and empower your team members. Let them come up with the solutions. And then instead of just bringing you problems, bring me the problem, but then bring 1 or 2 solutions with that problem. And then once you see that, you empower them and they'll feel as if they own that problem. And then all of a sudden, if you've got 5 or 6 team members, they each bring 1 or 2 solutions, you're going to find the solution because you don't know it all. And that's a way of listening to them and you're connecting with them. And then they're going to want to solve the problem with you.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. That's what I would do with my teams. It's like Dude, I don't even do your job. How are we gonna fix this? I have no idea. And I loved that because you see the eyes brightening up. And it's like, oh Rick, I think
Yes.
we should da, da, da." It was
Yes.
it was great. It was great. We built our company up and it was just like that. I stayed in my lane, as the leader, as a consultant. Okay, this is what I do, this is what you guys do. Let's figure this thing out like a team.
Mhm.
I absolutely adore that. Absolutely adore that. You've talked a number of times about bringing in external resources or going to external resources. You talked about having coaches, mentors. You talked about still, going to training. It sounds like something that you value. Give me your thoughts on that overall thinking. And I say it in contrast to a lot of entrepreneurs. They get in there, they do the job. As you said, we learn from the street, we learn from YouTube, et cetera, et cetera. But you're actually going out and working with professionals. Why is that?
I think in this world, you're either growing or you're dying. And I've heard the word expert thrown around so much in the last 5 or 6 years. And I've realized that these experts, so called, they don't really know what the hell they're talking about. Like if you look at the whole problem with the real estate market, everyone said there was no inflation. Then there's inflation. Cut rates, don't cut rates. You know, debt was coming due 2 years ago. Now it's coming due now. And I just see that. And I don't ever want to consider myself as an expert. I want to continuously learn because things are evolving and things are changing so quickly. Now, the foundation, the base foundational skills that you learn, it's great, but you're always trying to learn new skills, whether it's communication, whether it's negotiation, whether it's business skills, whether it's scaling a company. I wasn't born with any of these skills and I want to get better. And I
Yeah.
see how good you can get when you get better at something. You're like, and I've learned that people out there, the vast majority of us are just winging it and then trying to figure it out. And that gives me comfort knowing that, hey, if I want to learn something, I can go ahead and I can hire somebody. And the reason why I want to hire somebody, Rick, is because I want to have myself held radically accountable. If I'm going to give Rick $10,000 to learn this technique or this skill, I know that I need to show up every week for the call. I know that I need to do my homework and I know that I need to be prepared. Whereas most people, like, I can get it free. I can go on chat and chat can help me out. And that's a great place to start. But there's a difference. You need to be in the learning zone and you need to be in the performance zone. And that's what people don't understand. They're constantly performing at their craft, but they're not learning at their craft. So if you can put both of those together, a quick example is being on this podcast. We and you are right now are in our performance zone. But if I'm trying to learn public speaking, I can't take risks on this and try to practice a technique, whether it's prompting, whether it's the 3-step, or whether it's trying to use magic words. I can, but this is not the venue to do that. I'll do that in my practice sessions. I'll get really good at that. And then I'll try to bring it into this session and master it here. So people need to understand that. And for me to really answer your question, to bring it full circle, I just was born that way. I think my parents taught me that way. It's just really work hard and really try to be good at something. Try to be good at what God put me here for. And I want to be a role model to my kids. I don't want my kids to look at me one day and go, Dad, he didn't give it his all. He wasn't there. He's a little lazy. He didn't like working at the restaurant. He didn't show up. He came home grumpy all the time. I don't want that. I want to be a role model for my children, to have them look at work as something that's really excellent, really soul fulfilling, and really a great way to earn a living and to provide for the family.
Thinking about the entrepreneur as a human.
Hmm.
We have our business, our work, we have the people that we engage with, in the space, and we have our families, but then we also have ourselves.
Hmm.
What are some habits that you have or some practices that you do to make sure that you're firing on all cylinders, so to speak?
I am right now at my farm. We've got 6 acres. I've got 25 chickens. I've got 4 cows. Just had a little baby a couple months ago. I've got 5 donkeys. I got honeybees. I've got a garden outside as well. That nourishes my soul. I was out here yesterday pulling trees down, and that's something that I really missed. We have to be in nature. And for me, what you're talking about, this is one of the archetypes in money coaching, one of those characters in your mind. We all need a piece of the creator artist. And that's my creator artist is actually, that's how I feed myself is by getting into nature, by planting my broccoli, by taking care of the animals, by being out here. I love that. And the other component was up until about 6 months ago, I was singing opera. So we all have a creative side to ourselves. But unfortunately, sometimes we shut that off because as entrepreneurs, we're like, that's not going to make us money. Why am I gonna go sing opera? Like, why am I growing vegetables? I can go to the garden, I can go to the store and buy them ourselves. That creator artist, like you just said, we're human. That fuels us. That gives us a break. When I come here, phones off, nobody can get in touch with me. I am out there by myself. I love it. So for anybody listening to this, try to find something that you really enjoy. You may like to go fishing. You may like to shoot guns, stuff that I like to do. You may like to drive motorcycles, whatever it is. If you can find the piece just for yourself to enjoy, you may like to smoke cigars. You may like to drink whiskey, whatever that is. Just keep a piece of it to yourself because you need that creator artist, that warrior in you, and that magician inside of you needs to have the creator artist keep you fired up and to keep you lit.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I love I'm a trained chef and it's like sometimes, it's just like you get that challenge, just like, hey,
Yeah.
I'm gonna make this menu, I'm gonna make this recipe, da 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 da, da," or we're just gonna go
Uh-huh.
to the store, we're just gonna grab stuff off the shelf and do the thing.
Yes.
And it is so fulfilling,
Yes.
and
Good.
it's so fulfilling to do it and then just stand back and just watch everybody eat and just enjoy it. And
Mhm.
it fills me up. I
Yeah.
never thought about it like that, but you're absolutely right. That's
Mhm.
brilliant. That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing
Mhm.
that. Thank you for sharing that. Another thing that you talked about a lot, and you've talked, during our conversations, offline as well, you talked about the importance of creating value for those we're serving. I know that, I feel like coming from the hospitality industry, it's kind of natural. It's just what you do. You know that you are no better than the last meal that you served, even back before Google reviews. Where did this come from and why is this so important to you?
I had to think of where it came from. It's probably from my parents, if I had to say it. I mean, when you when you're an immigrant and you come to this country, you know you've gotta work. You know you've gotta create value. And I think as I got older and I saw them going into business and my dad going into business, I think it translated into that. It's just part of my nature, part of my DNA. Rick, I love getting emails from people that say, "Hey, Gino, thanks for closing a deal. Hey, Gino, can you look at this deal? Help me underwrite it." I like that. That's just something inside of me that I know when people strip down the bare essentials and you ask them what they really want to do in life, I think most people on the planet will say, I just want to help others. That's really what it comes down to. And it's weird because we're so busy and there's so much stuff going on. But man, there's something about helping somebody. I just don't know what it is. And I love that component of the coaching world because I know, Rick, how much it helped me, how much when I was struggling at the restaurant. I'm like, I don't want to be here. And the skills that I learned from coaching and all of my coaches and all of my mentors, how they've helped me along this journey and how they've impacted me and how I can be some part of somebody's life and do the same thing to them, I think that's what's lit me up over the last couple of years.
Yeah, that's remarkable. Yeah, I always think about it. I always think about the idea of, impact. It's like how are we going to, reach, this podcast in particular, how are we going to reach more people? How are we going to inspire more people to just keep going, just keep pushing? Because as you
Mhm,
said before, I mean, what we do is hard. It's lonely. People don't get it unless they're doing the thing.
mhm,
I love that thinking. I love that thinking. But I think for me, I do a lot of times think about it from the hospitality perspective. It's just like, how do we make a great experience for every single person that walks through the door? Their guest or, somebody that's, trying to find our stuff, consuming our content, just making
mhm,
it available.
mhm,
We haven't talked about really like building a company.
mm.
So you started real estate business, from the ground up. This was something that you guys had your brainchild, and you're like, let's do this. What were some lessons? And I know that you coach a lot of folks too. What were some lessons that you had like in that startup phase? Just like these are things we absolutely have to do in order to be successful.
Well, Rick, I'm going through that right now in this new company that I'm building with Barbaro 360. And I think the very first thing you need to do, and this may be a lot more obvious to a company like a restaurant, but I think the first thing that you need to do when you're building this business is what is your message? What is your vision? who you're trying to serve. And if you don't get that clear, you're going to start putting out marketing messages. You're going to start creating programs and products that don't align. Your messaging is going to be confusing. Am I speaking to Rick the entrepreneur, or am I speaking to Mary the housewife? And it seems very simple and very obvious, but that's the struggle that we've been going through with Barbaro 360 as we've been trying to create our marketing. Like, who are we speaking to? Well, right now we're narrowing down. We're speaking to the faith community, whether you're Christian, whether you're Catholic, that's who we're speaking to. We're speaking to families, most likely entrepreneurs, people who have money and who want to invest. We're speaking to people who probably have businesses or high paying jobs. And we're speaking to people who really want to create a better family life. They want to get around the dinner table. They want to be able to have those conversations about money. And they also want to have a component and talk about the legacy piece. Now, that was what I think businesses should do early on before they start spending any money. And for me with the restaurant, it was just a lot simpler because, hey, we have a restaurant, we're opening a restaurant, but I could have gotten it more dialed in as far as creating the vision. Because in that vision, I can relate it to my team members and they're more brought in. If I had a mission statement, if I had core values, I didn't have any of that early on with my first business. Had a restaurant for 20 years, as I said, with my business partner Jake, within 5 years, we had over 800 apartment units. I mean, what changed? I mean, not much, but yet enough. And that's what I was just mentioning, those core values, the mission statement, the whole kind of governance, the whole kind of, well, when I talk with the family governance, but then also having rhythms in the business, having cadences of accountabilities, huddles, end of days, weekly huddle calls, quarterly priorities, yearly planning meetings, all of these things that we need to do to start building a business. And even if you're by yourself and you're doing it by yourself, it still holds you accountable to have a call with yourself this morning. What did I do yesterday? What were my wins and my losses? And what do I need to accomplish today? It's so important. I never did that with the restaurant. That's why I could never scale. I could never build it beside myself. 95% of businesses in this country do not exceed $1 million in revenue. 95%. But businesses that exceed $10 million, 20% of those that went over a million get over 10 million. They figure that out. And I'm one of those that got over $10 million in revenue with the real estate. I figured out that you need to put those systems in place. And I think one of the most important things is the people that you hire and the culture that you create. That's why I've harped on it 2 or 3 times. The values and mission statement are so important because you need people rowing in the same direction. And if you don't have that, it's going to be hard to scale a company and to build a company.
Absolutely. That is, that's one of the more difficult conversations is how to get the right people,
Hmm.
on the bus.
Hmm.
I mean, a lot of people interview like really, really well. And you put a job post out there, you're going to get a million resumes.
Yes.
What do you say to folks? How do folks really drill down and get that right person or those right people?
It's a crapshoot. My business partner says it. We have about 95, almost 100 people on the team. When you hire somebody, it is a crapshoot, but you listen to the verbiage, you listen to the words, and you pre-frame it by letting them know that it's people first, extreme ownership, growth mindset, make it happen. Those are our core values, right? And if you're in the manager's role and you're in the office and you're like, well, that's not my job, well, then you're not our employee. It's that simple. And I think the problem is that they may come on, but if you don't have that customer journey for the employee, you need to have an employee journey as well. You need to be able to train them along. You can't just hire somebody and let them go. For our team, we're still developing this because this is something that's really challenging for small businesses. You have to hold their hand the first 30, 60, 90 days as far as sales training, as far as leasing training, as far as kind of any kind of objections. And then as you're training them along, you'll see the cues. You'll see the people who want to be there. You'll see the people who fit certain roles. And that's your duty as the entrepreneur to go, well, that person's really not good at sales. They're really good at more of the manager role and vice versa. That person doesn't work well with people. So maybe that person should be a maintenance tech out in the field because he or she's all by himself. It's a hard thing to do. But I think once, first and foremost, like I said, putting out what your values are. And that's why it's important because you hire and you fire those values. And not only your employees, your vendors, the people you work with, your partners, everybody has to follow along with what those are for the company, for the entity.
Absolutely. I love having conversations about values. One of the challenges though, and I've seen this happen over and over, and I've done it myself. You have those one or two people.
Hmm.
You've got a team of people, however size your team is, but you have like one or two people that are kind of like bad fruit. And a lot of times, I mean, like I said, like I started saying, I've held on to people that probably should have moved on sooner. How do you remedy that? I mean, obviously, you've got your values, you're measuring their against their values, but it's actually going through the process of pulling the trigger and saying, hey, you know what, you're probably not a good fit.
This is the biggest problem that I think most entrepreneurs have. And I have this problem probably more than you and everybody put together. I one of my values is loyalty. So when I hire Rick, and Rick's been working for me for 3 years, and then all of a sudden we added on another apartment complex, and Rick is like, "I don't really feel like going out there." But I've been loyal to Rick, and you say that one or two bad apples will spoil the lot. It just will. That's just the reality. I had this issue a couple months ago with my son with the business. I had a video marketer, digital creator. He's been working for us for like 8 years with the other company. And we started using him with the Barbaro 360. And my son kept telling me, Dad, he's not doing it. And I just felt, to your point, I held on a little too long. I had to have a 23-year-old finally convince me to say, hey, Dad, we need to let him go. And was it painful in the short term? Man, it is painful in the short term. It's hard. But always remember, as an entrepreneur, short term pain, long-term gain. I'm telling you, it's so hard to understand because we're all comfortable. We know what we got, but there's a road that we haven't taken. And I'm here to tell you, if you have one or two bad people that are pulling the rest of the team down, I promise you, as you listen to this, if you get rid of that person, all of a sudden the next couple of weeks, the morale of everybody starts perking up. Things start happening. Tony Robbins says it best. Those five people that are around you, all of a sudden you start raising the standards for those five, everything goes up. You have one that's below the standard, it pulls everybody else down. Once you pull that person from the equation, everyone else can start to breathe. Everyone else feels a little bit more comfortable and they start working and you can relate to them because what you're saying to yourself is if you're keeping that person, you're going against the values that you subscribe to the company. And that's the other component that I just didn't feel good about. I had the loyalty, but yet this person is not performing. He doesn't have the growth mindset. He doesn't have extreme ownership, but I'm still keeping that person. So that's really difficult. My business partner is phenomenal at that. He's done it for so many years now that if somebody doesn't fit the team, he's actually conditioned our COO and our regionals to say, this person's not performing. We need to get rid of him. He doesn't even have to have that decision anymore because the team sees that in real time. They recognize that and it's making their job harder.
Mm,
So why make my job harder? I need to get rid of this person. It's a great way to train your team. But I'm here to tell you, it's not easy, but man, getting rid of that short-term pain, just equate it to having cancer. If you've got cancer in your body, do you want to let it sit there and fester, or do you want to take care of it in the short term? It's going to be harmful. You may lose your hair. You may have some sickness going on in the first couple of weeks, but a year later, you'll be much better.
yeah. Yeah, yeah. Well said. Well said. Well said. Thank you for that. Last question for you. My favorite question. So, the name of the podcast is The Relentless Pursuit of Winning. Everybody defines winning however they want to. It could be, something small, family, business, whatever that is. The difficulty that we as humans have sometimes is that relentless pursuit. What would you recommend to someone in order to help them maintain that relentless pursuit of whatever it is that they're pursuing?
That's an easy question for me. For me, it's just having partners. I mean, I've got two partners in my life, my wife, number one, and my business partner, Jake, number two. I have to continue to work relentlessly because they are. Because my wife said to me, Gino, we can leave the restaurant. We can leave New York. Once she said that to me, she gave me permission. And that put a burden on me to say, okay, if she's giving me permission and she's giving me the ability to do that, I can't let her down. I have to work really, really hard to be able to pull that through. Once you start becoming relentless and you start doing things, it starts becoming a habit. It may be hard in the beginning, but now it's pretty commonplace for me. Like I don't even think about it anymore to become relentless because I've already built that muscle. But if you're struggling and you're all by yourself and you need some kind of radical accountability and that relentless execution that I talk about a lot, you need to find somebody to hold you accountable. You need to find somebody that you can partner with who all of a sudden you're willing to let yourself down. You're willing to sit on the couch over there and watch Netflix. But when you're partnered up with somebody, you're not going to let them down. You're gonna let yourself down, but you won't let them down. When we started this business thing with Jake, I was working at the restaurant. I had no qualms about coming home at 10 o'clock at night and underwriting deals. I had no qualms about eating right through lunch because I knew that ultimately I'd be feeding his family and he'd be doing the same thing for me.
I hear that partnership all the time. I love that you and your wife partner. I think that is phenomenal. That's absolutely, my opinion, the best thing ever. I hear it over and over and over again. Oh, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for my other person.
Mhm.
That's beautiful. That's a beautiful thing. You have a giveaway for our audience. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Wrote a book last year, a little over a year ago. It's called Happy Money, Happy Family, Happy Legacy. And I wrote the book because I had the happy money guru, Ken Honda, on the show. And he looked at me in his Japanese accent. He says, "You need to write happy money, happy properties, happy legacy." And I'm like, dude, I don't want to write another property book. I just don't. I wanted to write something about family. So I ended up writing the book about, not money not the fact that money will make you happy. It's how you earn that money. Happy money is money that's earned through positive energy, through, the ability to enjoy what you're doing. Happy family is you want to create the happy family, utilize the happy money. And then ultimately, the legacy component is not often talked about in the context of money and family. And I always define legacy as not something that you leave behind, it's something that you activate today. And how do you activate that today is by creating the happy money to fuel the happy family so you're able to leave the happy legacy.
I love that. So what is the giveaway?
Oh, it's a book, free PDF. It's barbaro360.com. You can go on the website, click down the book, download the book. It's a PDF copy. If you want to reach out to me personally on my email is Gino at jakeandgino.com, and I'll send you a PDF copy of my book.
Awesome, awesome. And I will definitely put those links and how to get the book on your show notes. Anything you want to leave our audience with?
I love the title of the podcast. I want to know how you came up with it.
I was shocked that it was available, to be honest with you. I've been, I was an athlete, and as a younger guy, and it's like,
Yeah.
winning is like, just this thing, and
Yeah.
that you're gonna lose. There's gonna be games that you're not gonna make, whatever it is, but you keep going after it, you keep getting after it, and I don't think any differently.
Mhm.
And so I go out and I'm Googling, it's just like, this is available? Are you kidding me? I want it. I took it. I own it. I love it. I love it. Yeah. And it,
And
it
that's
drives
why.
it still drives me. It still makes me my shtick about how I maintain that relentless pursuit. It's this. It's this.
So I think the last thing I would say to wrap it up is if you're listening to this, what's your relentless pursuit? Because if you're an entrepreneur, you have to have that relentless pursuit. And it's not just of making money. Money is one of the components. But you asked a question earlier. It's focusing on the purpose of the mission, but also focusing on the money of the mission. You have to have both. And ultimately, I had mentioned it to you, money does not corrupt you. It will not corrupt you. It will reveal your true intentions.
Gino, this has been a fantastic conversation. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks, Rick. I appreciate it.
Absolutely, absolutely. And folks, thank you so much for watching or listening to another episode of the Relentless Pursuit of Winning podcast. We'll catch you next time.